Thanks for coming out, everyone. I'm glad we all still made it. I know we've been changing a bunch of locations often, but we're going to talk some real estate. Does anyone know who said this quote here? The more uncomfortable you are with the house hack strategy, the better the return. It was me, so we're going to start trademarking that now. So just tell your friends and stuff. But the reason I say that, we're going to get into a little bit, is not necessarily in terms of like the actual return you get based on strategy. It's just more of the effort that you're going to be putting in to each property that you are house hacking. So to start, we're just going to talk about what is house hacking. And it's when you own a primary residence and you rent out a portion of that primary residence, whether it's the garage, another bedroom, another unit, even a parking space for an RV, something along those lines is what a house hack would be. Now, it is up for a little bit of a debate. I do have my transaction coordinator. Her name's Jenna. She said she was house hacking one time, but she does a weird way of house hacking where she just buys the primary residence and then rents it out once she moves, which you could still consider that as house hacking, even though you're not renting out while you live in the property to save on rent. But it's harder when you have kids to kind of do other strategies of house hacking. So I gave it to her, and that is going to be what we're going to call as level 1 of house hacking. It's just when you own the property, you move out, and you rent that out, the single family home, to someone else, and whatever strategy you decide that works best. But there are 4 to 5 levels of house hacking that we're going to be talking about. The first one we just mentioned. The second one is going to be if you purchase a duplex and then you rent out the other side in whatever strategy you decide. The third one is going to be co-living and then renting out a duplex with also doing co-living on your side or doing some type of furnished rentals within the mix of units that you own as well. And then if you really want to get crazy and try and save as much money as possible when you're living in the property to save on rent, you're going to want to do some type of single family home, renting out the rooms and short-term rentals combined with furnished rentals. I've personally done it where you rent to travel nurses or anyone that's coming here on vacation to kind of check out Colorado Springs. And the reason I had that quote up earlier is because when you want to get as much money as possible, doing rent by the room in short-term rental fashion as it furnished, you're cleaning it yourself, you're managing it yourself, you're dealing with any maintenance issues that come up, really like you're doing everything. And that's why you get the best return on it. But it is very uncomfortable with you living in the property. You're having a new roommate come in the middle of the night because they're coming down from the airport in Denver, and you're like, yeah, I guess I trust this dude that's going to come into my house at 1 a.m. and he's going to probably be loud, but it's something you have to do if you want to be able to live as close to free as possible. And the last one on here is going to be garage conversions. You can also do like any type of bedroom addition, would probably be level 5, and you can definitely skip ahead to any of these levels. However, if you want to take it as a very, basic and not be too risky, starting at level 1 and moving down to 5 would be the best way to go. Because once you get involved with rehab stuff and getting more tenants and doing the bedrooms, that's when it gets a little bit more complicated in your house hack. So the benefits of house hacking, the first and probably the best one is having the low down payment. And we're going to run some numbers on different types of down payment options and what ROIs are going to be looking like for each of them. In this low down could be 0%, 3.5%, 5%, 10% are typically the most ideal low down payments that you're going to want to look for. You get started in real estate. A lot of people get into real estate because they want financial freedom. They want to be able to travel when they want all over the world. And you can definitely do that. It just takes a little bit of time, and you're not going to be able to buy, the 15-unit property that cash flows several $1,000s a month right off the bat. You're going to have to pay your dues, get the small one, learn how to manage a single family home first, and slowly work your way up to the 15-unit. And then getting the experience at the small level is what gets you to that larger property. And also, you don't know what type of problems you're going to run into, how much reserves you should be having for each type of single family home, for this duplex, and you kind of learn that as you go, and as you grow your portfolio is how you'll learn, okay, I know I should have this much reserves for this type of property because I've been in these experiences in the past, and you can learn from that. So when you do your house hack, you want to start with an exit strategy. what you're going to do once you ideally move out, because that's the whole idea of why you get into real estate and house hacking, is to ideally have a rental property at the end of you living in it. So there's many ways to do this, and it's crucial for all real estate strategies when you purchase a property. It doesn't have to be for a house hack specifically. And the more exit strategies you have, the better. Just kind of cover your basis of like, hey, I could do this, I could do that, I could sell it, I could refinance it. The more options you have and know of those options, the better protected you'll be when you do purchase a property. So some ways to take advantage of them would be just on the selling side, the 2 of 5 rule. When you do have a house hack, you live in it for 2 years and then you sell it within the 3 afterwards, you can avoid capital gains tax, which would be up to $250 for a single person and $500 for a married couple. And then also doing, if you move out of your house hack and you rent it for a couple years, say you live in it for just 1 year, doing a 1031 exchange into that larger 4-plex, 5-plex that you want to for more cash flow would be another type of an exit strategy. You also want to have exit strategies for how you're going to be operating it. And if you live in it, you're doing rent by the room, but then when you move out, are you also going to do rent by the room, or are you going to do something like a short-term rental? And do the property that you have, does it qualify for those permits that you have? Because a lot of times a short-term rental property would not be the same as a property style that you could use for a co-living rent-by-room property. So the current challenges of 2024, we have high interest rates. They're at 7, 8%, ridiculous. And rental rates are very flat, and they're in some cases declining here in Colorado Springs. I have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. I put it up for rent in the beginning of June, and I just got it filled as of yesterday. And I rented it out for 2 years at $1,850, was how much it was going for. 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,100 square foot. And there were people that were interested in it for the first month, a couple applications, but no one was really super qualified for it. So then I lowered the price down to $1,850. I originally had it at $1,900 in order to try and get increased rents. Which I might as well try, right? But then I noticed, okay, rental rates are not increasing as much as they were, which I thought that might be the case, but I had to test it. And so rates were actually dropping for rents. And so that's something you should be aware in your calculations for your house hack when you plan your exit strategy as well. Because if you go to move out and you're thinking you're going to get $100, $200 more in your rent, but really you're not. They're just going to be the exact same as what they are 2 years ago when you bought the property. You're going to be in a huge loss situation, and you might have to be forced to sell the property. So what does work here in Colorado Springs? Probably co-living and rent by the room is one of the best strategies, because I think more properties are available out there for it to be operated on. I do like furnished rentals and short-term rentals. You can probably get a little bit more cash flow out of it, but it's very rare to find a good property at the right price where it all makes sense in order to allow for that short-term rental property to be successful for you. And probably the biggest thing in 2024 is just have patience, because with rates where they're at, there's rumors around that they're going to drop at the end of this year. It's not likely that that could be the case, and you can refinance to where it all makes sense, where you can get a good rate and you're able to do it as a long-term rental in the property, because most long-term rentals will not work in 2024. And if you do want to have a higher down payment in order to make sure that you can do the safest option for a long-term rental, that's completely fine. You just want to understand that you're really putting aside a lot of cash in order to have cash flow on this property. And ideally, we do want cash flow, but maybe your strategy is not going to be the best for the property that you bought, where all the numbers are making sense. So we're going to do a multifamily versus single family analysis for a house hack. We're going to start with multifamily first. And with multifamily, it's more likely for short-term rental zoning, because you do have to be zone R2, R4, R5, C5, all those multifamily commercial types of zoning is what you're going to need. You have a higher chance of cash flow with multifamily as well, because you're going to have 2 tenants, ideally operating out of it. And if one leaves, at least you have someone else to cover a portion of the mortgage, so you get the next person into the property. The loan requirements can be more challenging if it's 3 or more units, because of the 75% rule you have to have where the total gross rent for the properties need to be at 75%. They need to be able to qualify the principal and interest for the property in order for it to make sense from the lender. And in Colorado Springs, a 3 or 4 unit is going to be like $700,000 or more, and it's not likely to make that happen with long-term rents, which is that's the numbers they're going to make. So ideally, a duplex is going to be the way to go. But if you can find one that does qualify, then you know it's a great deal because it does qualify at 75% rent levels. And it's really good for couples as well. If you're really big into house hacking and real estate, but your spouse is not so much, doing a duplex where you have your own space and it's like you rent out another space that's completely separate is a lot better for getting the spouse on board for doing that, because at least they're still separate. They don't have roommates like a lot of people think house hacking. Oh, I'm going to have roommates. You don't have to have roommates if you have a duplex or fourplex and it's separated for your own spaces. Now, for single-family homes, they will be a little bit lower in price. The median home price right now is $500,000 for a single-family home, but you can probably get one for around $460,000, $480,000, where it still can make sense to do co-living while you're living in it. And there's easier loan requirements. It's not like the duplex where the 75% of the gross rent is what you need to qualify for it. You will have a lot more interaction with the tenants, mainly because you all use one kitchen, and so you all share a bathroom. And so running into tenants sucks, honestly. It really does. Like when you are like don't want to talk to anyone and your tenant's right there and he just wants to talk all day, it's really annoying, and you gotta have excuses like, oh, my mom's on the phone, I gotta go, and those types of things. So just be prepared for that.
On the record, you said having tenants
as roommates, like like sharing a kitchen, sharing a bathroom. That's those types of roommates. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's harder for short-term rentals to find proper zoning for short-term rentals, is what that's supposed to say. Mainly because of the zoning requirements, in most single-family homes are going to be zoned R1, and so when you move out from your house hack, you're most likely not going to be able to turn it into a short-term rental. So what down payment gets you the best ROI is we're going to look at here. And this is a little bit estimated on my rents that I was doing because I had to compare it for each one. And PMI was estimated for certain ones as well. But this is off of a 6-bedroom, 3-bath home, $500,000 purchase price, and at 6.65% rate, doing 10% of reserves every month set aside. $4,425 would be your max revenue, and that's around $737 per bedroom is what we're going to go off of. So doing a VA loan, 0% down, you could get a cash-on-cash return of around 12% doing it that way. And if you were to sell it in 5 years, that's a 51% return. And that is calculating just what your closing costs would be, since you're doing 0% down is what that number is based off of. And then we have 3.5% down gives you a negative 5.43%. So you would not be cash flowing if you did an FHA loan on this. But if you were to sell it, you could still make 20% return because of the appreciation and equity based off of 3% every single year in appreciation on the property. At 5%, 1.2% cash-on-cash return and 19% if sold in 5 years, and then 10% at 5% cash-on-cash and 15% return. And then doing 20% down, you could get almost an 8% return and a 12% annualized return. So when you do look at purchasing a house hack, take in consideration, like, yes, I do want the cash flow, but it's not always all about your cash flow for your first one. It's for the experience, and you can sell it, in 2 years in order to get that benefit of transferring it into your next one, where maybe it is a better time for interest rates, rents have increased, and at least you're making a great return on your very low down payment at the end of the day. Now, we're going to do the same exact thing, but for the best strategy. I used the same property, and it was a little bit tricky because a lot of co-living properties I would not use for a short-term rental property, and you would not use for a long-term rental property. So take it with a grain of salt, that's all I'll say. But co-living did good with a 19% overall return. Short-term rentals were the standout with a 14% cash-on-cash return and 25% after 5 years. The midterm rental was still pretty good, and at 21% at the end of 5 years. The biggest thing was that long-term rental did not work at all. So it just goes to show that long-term rentals right now, if that's your strategy, you have to have a high down payment or a fantastic interest rate doing probably owner financing. So you're gonna have to do to make that sense, have that make sense. So the overall is that in 2024, co-living and short-term rentals are most likely, you throw midterm rentals in there too, your best bet at getting cash flow and having a successful house hack upon moving out in 2024. So yeah, experience is the last thing we're going to touch on right here. House hacking is the best way to get started, to kind of grow your experience levels. Because again, I know you want to get the cash flow, you want to go to the large properties that will be able to make sense in order to get you the life that you want, but it takes time. I've been house hacking for 3.5 years yet, and I'm not quite where I want to be. And so it could take you, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in order to get all your house hacks in line, but you'll learn so much throughout the process that you'll be able to, okay, I'm going to start partnering with people and invest their money into the larger properties in order to get the cash flow that you want. So that is all it. Thanks for coming out. And you can follow me and Ryan on YouTube and Instagram right here to stay connected. Yeah.